The Hawthorne Effect is actually an amazing piece of simplicity, and it's an understanding of this that's going to help you build your business with almost no specific details or no ad spend or anything. It's kind of crazy. I'm going to get stuck in right now. But seriously, the Hawthorne Effect will make you and help you build your business by doing this simple thing right now. Okay, so to truly understand what the Hawthorne Effect actually is, I need to tell you a little story and tell you how this actually came about. So back in the late 1920s, around 1927, 1928, obviously very different times to what they are these days, we actually had an Aussie, of all people, funnily enough, an Aussie called Henry Landsberger. Now, he was from Adelaide, and he was actually the very first person to do any sort of time management, time efficiency-based studies. And so what he actually did was he was over in West Chicago. He was at a place called, the business was actually called the Hawthorne Electric Company, hence how the name comes about, the Hawthorne Effect. And so there he was as the first person to ever run tests and avenues looking at time efficiency and task effectiveness in the workplace. Now, we all know, there's been a plethora of books run, there's webinars, seminars, gurus on this and that, the whole big thing that's happened over the last 20 years, 30 years, right? In and around making people more efficient and more effective in the workplace, and then it obviously leads on to a whole bunch of other studies. But here's what they actually did. The very first time this happened was back in the late, like I said, 1927, 1928, and it ran for 3 or 4 years at the Hawthorne Electric Company. And they were trying to look at the lumens, so the amount of light, how bright the light was. And I'm just going to turn off my light while I do this and try and work and explain it visually as well. So it's kind of for those that are watching and playing along at home, not just listening to the audio version, you'll actually see that I'm actually playing around with the different lighting percentages. And we start looking at the lumens, that's 18%, and this is 20%. And now I'm at 24, and then we start to actually look at what type of resolution. So whether it's a bit more warm white or whether it's a bit more of a blue light. Maybe we want to put on some type of mood lighting, which I'm not going to mess around with today. But that's what they were actually doing. And they spent years working on, in this electric company, with all of obviously the workers on the floor, what type of light was going to get the workers to work more efficiently and ultimately get more work done to build the business, make the business more money and profits, etc. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what they found, well, not the end of the day, but the end of like 4 or 5 years worth of studies, they actually found that it didn't make a brass razoo of difference of what type of light, whether it was mood lighting, total darkness, ridiculously eye-blinding light. What actually improved people's ability to work and be more efficient and effective was actually the fact of someone standing there like with a clipboard and watching. Someone watching them, someone observing them, someone keeping an eye on what they do. And when you stop and think about it, for right now, that might actually seem like a lot of common sense to us. Whenever you try and watch someone, you try and make sure they're doing things right, micromanage, sit, look over their shoulder, people naturally will feel that pressure. They'll feel the eyes on them. Someone's watching them. Are they judging me? Are they thinking what I'm doing right or wrong? Or do they, am I doing, and as a net result, people work harder. They work faster. They become more efficient. And so it's known as the Hawthorne Effect, also known as, obviously, the observer effect. And so what they worked out, did take them a couple of years. And let's not make any comments in here about Americans and whether they're smart to get these things or not, okay? But what they actually realized is that whilst there is a boss or a manager standing up in the glass up above them, looking down onto a factory floor, people will actually feel like they're being watched and observed and will actually work faster and work harder. They won't stand around talking, doing nothing because they feel like they'll get sacked. And so when you think about it, that's then formulated so many different scenes and parts of movies over the 40, 50, 60 years after that, where you'd see factory workers and you'd have the stairs over the side of the factory there, and the bosses would be, looking above them, like from above them, looking down upon them, created this us versus them mentality, this hierarchy approach and all these things. But that was all based from these initial studies of, while we watch people will continue to work, which means we get more productivity and the business grows. So that's the observer effect, the Hawthorne effect, etc. So what's that mean to us? Well, great question for you to have asked. So here's the thing. People started looking at this in regards to surveys and feedback that businesses were doing. Some of our big supermarket chains and shopping retail stores would do surveys in the mid-1990s asking, what the best thing was about your visit today and what was the worst thing, etc. And what they started to do was started to then highlight the fact that the observer effect and the Hawthorne effect, which I didn't mention before, remiss of me, apologies, is when someone is actually watching you, when someone is actually paying attention to a subject and having a focus on a subject, regardless of whether that focus is positive or negative, you will actually heighten and increase the result by, on average, 8 to 12%. So fundamentally, that should start to actually blow your mind. Like when you think about it, if that just means we need to focus on something, and just by the mere avenue of focusing on it, we will improve it by 8 to 12%. Think about if you actually had a structured plan in place for your digital marketing, and we actually test and measure things properly on your, Facebook ads. We know that by having a focus, the Hawthorne effect is in place, and that the vast majority of times you'll get an 8 to 12% increase and improvement on those results just by the attention and time and effort you have focusing on it. Maybe it's you realize that your clinic is really, maybe the practitioners leave the rooms messy all the time. So when you actually have a bit of a focus on this, you'll notice that you'll actually have an 8 to 12% improvement in the satisfaction or the level of which people actually feel it's okay to leave a room tidy or messy. Maybe it's an avenue. Look, we could go on about 1,000 different ways that we could measure this. But when you get back to what happened with surveys in the mid and late 90s with so many retail places, won't use their names, they were actually then starting to go, what was your best part? What was the worst part? What did we let you down on? And so what then they fundamentally realized is they started to chase ghosts, because people would come out and they wouldn't have a bad experience. They wouldn't have something that was bad or negative. But the mere presence of the survey people out the front in the mall asking them to tell us what was, they thought they were doing the right thing in regards to getting feedback. But what they were actually doing was heightening the negativity and getting people to actually look for things that might have been a problem that weren't actually a problem to them. They weren't consciously thinking that the floors were dirty, but all of a sudden they're like trying to look for something to answer the survey. And so they'd be like, oh, well, I suppose the floor could be more tidy. And so it meant that they now chased ghosts. They spent a load more time, money, and effort and energy into keeping the floors clean, which wasn't actually a problem in the first place. Again, they were focusing on the negative side that wasn't a problem, but making that heightened to 8 to 12% increase occur, and therefore they get distracted and focus on other areas that they didn't need to be worrying about or working on modifying in anyway. So think about your own business. Think about how your focus on working with your business financials can have a massive improvement in the data that you have in the test and measure. Maybe you haven't actually looked at your referrals lately, and we need to have a really good focus on where they're coming from, what type of conditions, what type of marketing we've got, what messages we're actually putting out to the marketplace. Because every time we put something out there, we're going to have a naturally heightened increase of 8 to 12%. So what if we focused on this, and we focused on this in 2 or 3 different ways, worked out what was best, and then drove down that pathway really hard? Means your return on investment would be 30%, 50%, maybe 500 or 600%. If you spend $50 of time, money, and effort, and you get 10 or 15 clients, then that's 1,000% return. So it's really, really important to understand this. We need to stop and have a look at our cancellations, why they're occurring, but we should also be aware that if just by focusing on them, we know we're going to increase them by 8 to 12%, we need to make sure that we're very prevalent in what we're doing on the negative, what we're focusing on, and how we're going to pull out the back end of that solution-wise so we don't heighten those negativities. So it's a really crucial part. The observer effect, also known as the Hawthorne effect, is a massively important understanding that fundamentally we can have huge amounts of growth and scale. We can have huge amounts of negativity that's avoided. And we can make sure that when we do look for critical analysis on our team or ourselves or our marketing or operations or systems or any of these aspects of the business development pathway, we can actually be in a place to know that just by merely having a focus on it for like a week or two with our team is going to increase those results by 8 to 12%. It's exciting. I'm excited. You should be too, because it's a great way for you to be able to build and move forward in the right ways of your business. And it also means you can then have 2 or 3 specific avenues of growth. And if 1 or 2 of them aren't perfect, well, you're still going to get 8 to 12% growth. And that 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 is going to go great. And you're going to have exponential net return as well. So guys, think about all the great ways you can utilize the Hawthorne effect, also known as the observer effect, thanks to that great Aussie, Henry Landsberger, back literally, well, nearly not quite 100 years ago, but going very, very close to it. Great work back then, and we should be able to do this in our business. We work with clients working in and around some of these areas, and it means that rather than just highlighting it by 8 to 12%, we can get huge 30 and 50% improvements on negative side, and literally hundreds of percent improvements of return on investments of sales and marketing strategies and approaches. I think you need to do it as well. It's a simple, very easy approach to understand and leverage out for the growth and scale of your business. I'll talk to you again very soon. Hey guys, thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Profitable Practice Podcast. I would love nothing more than for you to be able to leave a review. I get so much joy out of listening and reading the amazing things that you guys say about this. So please subscribe to our channel, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Let's get some more fantastic information out there so all of us can grow the industry together. Cheers for now.